Jorge and Anfisa formed one of the most controversial couples to feature on TLC's 90 Day Fiancé series. Much of their relationship was built on falsehoods and dishonesty, and neither left the relationship with much integrity intact. That said, while their marriage was extremely rocky, they both seem to be doing well today. Though Jorge was caught up in a criminal case that landed him in prison for 2 years, has since turned the corner and started a new family. However, his strange dating history remains a TLC fixation. Not giving up easy. I didn't get anything back for the first, 10 messages that I sent her. When the audience is first introduced to Jorge, he remarks upon his troubled dating history and explains how he met Anfisa. As it turns out, they met over Facebook, and Jorge claims to have fallen in love with her immediately. He also claims to have messaged her a total of 10 times without getting a response back. Hopefully, he was exaggerating. Messaging a woman 10 times in a row out of the blue would definitely come across as a bit unsettling. That said, the relationship between Anfisa and Jorge was anything but conventional. Bogus bank account. Maybe I exaggerated a little bit to Anfisa about how much money I had. Fan favorite 90 Day villains. Jorge and Anfisa flat out stated that they didn't trust each other, and, after their marriage, that distrust came to a head. Jorge finally had to come clean to Anfisa about the amount of debt he was in, and she wasn't pleased in the slightest. Both parties are equally responsible for the relationship being as toxic as it was, and this was perhaps Jorge's greatest failing. He knew that Anfisa was attracted to wealth, so he fabricated his own financial standing in order to keep her interest. The extent of his lies isn't exactly known, but exaggerated a little bit seems like an understatement. Post-nup problems. I think you're too immature to know this. After Jorge came clean about his financial situation, the two agreed to sign a post-nuptial agreement that would potentially protect Anfisa from inheriting her husband's debt. Jorge was willing to come to the table, but Anfisa wasn't willing to budge until she got her way. During a meeting, Jorge tries to explain his side of the situation, and, when Anfisa doesn't take kindly to his argument, he calls her immature, and she slaps him. Spousal abuse at a post-nuptial meeting isn't typically a good sign for a marriage, and, as viewers may have expected, their "till death do us part" didn't last very long. Angry Anfisa. I don't know what would cause anybody to freak out like this. After Jorge sneaks out to meet with his lawyer, Anfisa calls him, enraged, demanding to know why he left without telling her. Jorge deflects and tries to act like it's not a big deal, but Anfisa continues to scream at him. In the end, Jorge cancels the meeting and returns home, remarking, "I don't know what would cause anybody to freak out like this." Without the context, this quote may not seem all that notable, but, spoken by a blank-faced Jorge, it's almost as if he's been oblivious or willfully ignorant of Anfisa's extreme behavior in the past. Nowhere to go but up. My past relationships were terrible. Fortunately, the 90 Day Fiancé series doesn't dive all that deeply into Jorge's romantic history, though he freely admits that all of his past relationships were terrible. Dating isn't always smooth sailing, but, if Jorge's time with Anfisa is anything to go by, his previous dating experiences must have been particularly rough. There was more lying than loving going on between these two, and, if that's the sort of precedent Jorge establishes in his relationships, then his love life prior to Anfisa likely wasn't a walk in the park. A troubling train of thought. I can't hold her as a slave and keep her in my basement. Anfisa was an aspiring model during her stint on 90 Day Fiancé, but Jorge seemed to have reservations about her career ambitions. When a stylist asks him if he'd be okay with the increased male attention Anfisa would receive as a model, Jorge intimates that he won't be able to accept it. During a cutaway interview, Jorge essentially says that he can't keep Anfisa from doing what she wants to do, but he says it in the absolute creepiest way possible. Hopefully, Jorge has learned to better phrase his thoughts after this blunder. A financial flop. I lost the money because I was slacking. Jorge was eager to downplay his debt as much as he could, but he couldn't hide it from his wife forever. Though he eventually confesses, he's still not honest about exactly what he did to end up in the red. Obviously, TLC wasn't going to air his in-depth financial details, and he has every right to conceal personal matters from the public, but his honesty should still be questioned. He states that he fell into debt because he was slacking, but that's hardly a reasonable explanation. Anfisa's erasure. She erased my phone. Early on in their relationship, Jorge was shockingly eager to overlook Anfisa's questionable behavior. At one point, Anfisa erases the data on Jorge's phone by way of his Apple account, and Jorge reacts as if it were a mildly inconvenient prank, going so far as to chuckle about it. When he's finally able to access his phone, he discovers that Anfisa has cancelled a flight and changed his passwords. Quite why he felt comfortable giving Anfisa this information is unknown, but his nonchalant attitude likely hid an anger that he didn't want to expose to the cameras. Green card greed. Even though she jokes about it all the time, I'm worried what happens when she gets it. Before an interview that could have major implications for Anfisa's ability to stay in the United States long term, she literally tells Jorge that she plans on ditching him as soon as she gets her green card. Jorge laughs it off, but she didn't seem to be joking. In a cutaway interview, Jorge expresses that she frequently jokes about leaving him, and that he's worried about what she may do once she doesn't have to depend on him to remain in the U.S. As it turns out, Jorge's worries were completely legitimate. The nuclear option. She had all my S packed. Anfisa would regularly throw Jorge out of his own apartment, and he spent many nights sleeping in his car in the parking garage. She even goes so far as to threaten to throw all of his stuff out the window. Eventually, these threats are made manifest as, after Jorge sneaks out to meet with his lawyer, he's called home by an incensed Anfisa, who had his belongings packed into suitcases. Anfisa even threw the TLC camera operators out of the apartment, signifying how thoroughly upset she was with the entire affair.